Well, here we are. It is Friday, June 21st, 2024, and this, of course, is the weekly video. We do these every Friday. We talk about auctions of Chinese and Asian art that have taken place during the past week. We talk about auctions that are coming up. We talk about things that are posted on our website at bitamount.com and the newsletter page, of course, which we update each week, which has things that we've handpicked from eBay, and then there's the global member pages where we cull primarily from live auctioneers, things that are coming up in the auction market that we like. We also cover Sotheby's and Christie's and so forth. So welcome. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I hope you enjoy the video. I don't know how many we've done now. I think we're up around 600 or 700 of them. I've kind of lost track. Anyway, here we are. A couple of things I wanted to talk about before we get into some of the price results is I had before I go any further, a couple of weeks ago I had mentioned that we had been approached by, over the years, we've been approached before, but we've been approached lately in particular by a number of auction houses who want to have paid ads on either the website or in these videos. And I mentioned it because I thought, well, you know, I wasn't particularly crazy about the idea, but if people didn't mind, you know, we could throw a little plug in. But I didn't like the idea personally, because if you take money from people and you're reviewing their auctions, it sort of shades the validity of the opinion being given about the auction, because you're being paid to talk about it. So we've decided not to. I think it's the only way to do it and keep things way above board, so nobody has any questions about, you know, why we talk about auctions that we talk about and don't talk about other auctions. If you're getting paid, you obviously know why we're talking about it. So anyway, we're not going to do it. We're going to just go on as we are in our merry little way and leave it alone. All right. Now, this bowl is coming up at Briggs Auctions in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Garnet Valley, Pennsylvania, on the 28th of this month. This is a really interesting bowl. If you like unusual and interesting bowls, when I first looked at it, I said, oh, it looks like a late Qing bowl. And I looked at it a little more closely. It's not. It's an 18th century bowl. The way the fritting appears here, the blackened fritting on the edges. And then this is all molded into the body. This is all relief work. All of these green areas are below the surface of the white porcelain, then they've been colored with the green enamels, and you have this beautiful phoenix on the front of the bowl, the phoenix on the interior of the bowl, and so forth. There's several phoenixes. They're in rondelles running around it, and then there's a Chenoir mark, of course, which is apocryphal. The bowl is absolutely filthy. As you can see, it looks like it's got tape stains on it and all kinds of gunk, but it's fine. It'll all clean off. This bowl will clean up beautifully. You can see how dirty it is, but it's a very unusual bowl, and I do believe it to be 18th century, and I think it's a fascinating thing. And it's 7.5 inches in diameter. It's not Chenoir. It's not Ming, obviously, because of the colors and the way it's done, but it's beautifully done, 18th century. It's hard to tell because of the amount of dirt on it exactly when it was done. I suspect in the early to mid 18th century, late Kangxi to probably Qianlong period, I suspect. But it could have been made a little earlier. It's got some of the same colors that you see in earlier pieces, but a very unusual thing. So if you like rare things, check that out. And the other thing to check out is this. This is coming up at Cheffins over in Cambridgeshire in the UK. It's a really interesting tea caddy. You've all seen this form of tea caddy before. This is not a rare form. The shape is well known with the scroll, high foot base, and all that. And apparently at some point they added this silver top. I don't know. I assume it lifts off. I don't know why they didn't shoot it with the lid off. It may be that there's some damage under there. You might want to find out. But the decoration on this thing just absolutely struck me as fantastic. Whoever the decorator was on this was a very, very fine, one of the finest decorators working on porcelain at this workshop. This is so delicately painted. It's almost breathtaking. And when you look at the flowers, the way the shading, the gentle shading of the flowers, the details of all the feathers on the bird, all of that in this beautiful white glaze. This is a heck of it. There it is. Now you can see the flowers. And that's very Young Chen looking, or early Qianlong, this color. They're dating it to around 1780. I don't agree with them. I think it's a little older than that. There's the bottom of it. looks exactly as it should look. But very nice thing. So it has, what it's got is a, there it is. I didn't see this before. It's got a fitted silver collar onto here with a lid. Now, it may not be damaged. They may have just added this. They did do that, especially in the 19th century. They added silver mounts to things fairly often. But at any rate, this is a nice thing. And it's estimated at just 200 to 400 pounds. It should bring that all day long. If you're a China trade collector, I would urge you to think seriously about buying this one. This is if you've wanted one of these tea caddies in this form, this is one of the nicest ones I've ever seen. And it's not done it's done in the Chinese taste rather than the more typical China trade patterns. So it makes it fairly interesting, doesn't it? All right, and now over to this. This is the Alex Cooper sale that took place last week. It was finishing up, I think, on the day that we were doing the video last week, wasn't it? Finished up on the 14th. Yeah, and there were some very nice things in here. The armorial pieces all did well. And so forth. But one of the things in the sale that I really, really liked was this piece of Japanese Arita ware, it started out as it's almost like the model of a Wan Li type of dish, which the Japanese did adapt in the 18th century. And then with these radiating panels, sort of like how they did late Wan Li pieces, or crackware. And then they added to the middle of it a heraldic shield, and then a goddess or a woman with wings above it. So it's obviously somebody's family crest of something like that. But it's a nice old one. It's an 18th century dish. Here's the back of it. Somebody cleaned the foot off very, very extensively, but it is 18th century. It's got these nice spur marks are still evident on the back side of it. Very typical of the better Arita wares. Nice lightish sort of cobalt tone to it. Beautifully done. And somebody bought this for just $250. That was an absolute bargain. I don't know why. It was 8 3/4 inches in diameter. I don't know where the Japanese buyers were, but that was a pretty rare thing. And it went for, if it had sold for $800 or $900, I wouldn't have been all surprised, because it's that kind of rare thing. It was very nicely done. And then over here to this. This is something that caught my eye because of a sticker that was on the bottom of it. This was absolutely great. And this was a steal. These pieces were a steal. Somebody got a bargain on these. These were sold by an old friend of mine years ago. Northeast Auctions, right there. Ronald Bourgeot. He was a major auctioneer in America. If you haven't been around if you weren't around 20 or 30 years ago, you won't know who he was. But and he still is. He's still alive. He's retired in Florida. Thank you. He's doing very well. He and his partner Jim are down there. Great guys. I've known them for years. I've known Ron since the 80s, and they ran arguably the best independent auction house outside of even including the majors for American furniture. There was no auction house in America that was better at American furniture than Northeast Auctions. And I'm including Sotheby's and Christie's and Skinner's and everybody else in that. Nobody did it better than Northeast Auctions. Nobody. And he's also every summer, because of his friendship with Carl Crossman, who wrote the famous book, The China Trade. He was from the area. He knew Ron. And he was sort of retired, living in Danvers outside of Boston. He's retired from his gallery. And Ron got him to come up and join him, and he did auctions with Ron every year, and he got Ron into doing a China trade sale every summer. And they did them for, I don't know, 20 years. And they sold some of the best China trade material you've ever seen, and some other great Chinese things. Many of the things that he sold ended up later being featured lots at Sotheby's and Christie's, and not necessarily doing any better, but they were immediately accepted by the big auction houses. And he had I have stuff all over my house that I bought at Ron's sales at Northeast. And any rate, these were absolutely great, and somebody got a steal on these. These were a bargain. These are 18th century European subject matter teapots, a pair of them with cups. I don't know if the cups are original with them because they're a slightly different pattern, but they certainly look nice with them. And somebody bought the whole lot for $950 plus premium. That is really inexpensive. That is an absolutely great buy. If the lot had brought 2,000 or 3,000, I wouldn't have been at all surprised. They were exceptional. They were very, very nice. And then over to this, the very nice memorial plate for the Dutch market. It's actually a soup bowl. It was about 8 or 9 inches. I thought it was 8 3/4. 9 inches in diameter, sold for $750. Very finely painted. I like this plate a lot because it was sort of done around, probably done around 1770 to 1780, somewhere in there. But very finely painted underglazed blue. Beautifully done underglazed blue. There's lots of shading in there and very nicely outlined and then filled in brilliantly. And then this beautiful enamel area in the center that is in excellent condition. The gilding isn't worn off. It all looks very, very good and things that you look for. And that's why the price was pretty good for it. It ended up going for $750 plus premium, so around $900, something like that for the soup plate. But interesting thing, a good thing. And then over to this. Oh, I put this in. I've had, through the identification auction preview assistant, I've had 3 or 4 inquiries about this grapes dish that's coming up at Rob Michaels. He listed it as an Iznik type of dish, but a number of people have written and said, is it possible this is an early Ming dish because it's so white? And no, it's not. This is not. This is a Turkish dish, but this is not from 1570. This is a much later example. It's a much later copy, probably from the 19th century. It could have even been made in Greece. But it's a lovely form. These grape patterns come from the earliest of the Iznik wares that reflect Chinese taste. Chinese porcelain was highly prized in Turkey. I'm actually putting together notes maybe to do a video on the relationship of the Chinese and their porcelain and the influence it had on the Turks, because they absolutely love Chinese porcelain. As many of you know, the Topkapi Museum has one of the finest collections of Chinese porcelain in the world, because they had so much of it brought to them as patronage and as gifts through many centuries, right, from the 14th century right through to the early 20th century. The Chinese porcelain was being brought to Turkey. At any rate, and this was an early prototype. But there are colors in here that don't belong here. And that's the problem with the dating of it. And the back of it is very modern looking. That's not what the back. I've actually owned the originals of these, and that's not what they look like. So, but at any rate, the estimate is I doubt it'll sell. I doubt it'll sell. But at any rate, it's not Chinese, and it's not 16th century Iznik. It's mid to late 19th to early 20th century. All right, now over to the Marco Polo sale that took place. I know a number of you bought at the sale because I heard from you. A couple of you bought some ceramics, a couple of you bought paintings and so forth. Overall, it was a very good auction. I was glad to see it because it's being run. The fellow that runs it, Carlo Santi, he is somebody I've corresponded with and known for probably 8 or 9 years. He worked for Katawiki for a while. He's a very nice guy. Very personable and works hard. And he wanted to have his own auction house. He worked with a couple of other auction houses to learn a bit about it. Worked with Pandolfini. He helped them with a sale, I believe, and some other things. And he decided just to open his own, which he did. And this is it. And the sale overall did well, and I was really glad to see it because it's very, the trick of starting an auction house and then getting consignments and making it work, especially selling from Italy, because Italy can be a difficult place to do business in. I think he's done a pretty remarkable job, and I like the fact that people are using it. It gives more options, and so far I think he's done a very good job as far as identifying things and being honest and fair about what things are. All right, and the sales results were quite good. I was very happy to see it. For example, this was a coral piece that we had talked about. I thought it was spectacular, and apparently so did everybody else, because it ended up selling for 25,000 euros or almost 27,000 US, plus the buyer's premium of 33% or 30%. So it ended up selling for about $33,000. But spectacularly well carved piece of coral, and the color of the coral was excellent. That very soft, warm pink tone. It's absolutely a beautiful color, and you can see here by the details how well this was done. This is as good as it gets when it comes to carving coral with the deities, the women, the female immortals, and then you have all the children, of course, tucked in all over the place on this thing. Absolutely great. And 26,700 plus premium. And then over to this. This was a very nice piece of jadeite he had in the sale. He dated it to late 19th century to early 20th. I think this is I don't think this is a 20th century piece. I think the carving is too good. Beautifully carved, meticulously carved. He had two meticulously carved stone, rock examples. He had a rock crystal piece we're going to talk about, which may be the best rock crystal piece I've ever seen. And then this, which was stupendously well carved, very delicately done. When you look at the details here of all these, and you think about what it takes to carve jade, what it takes to cut jade, and to do this level of fineness in the work, it's almost defying to imagine it. And not break any of it in the process, and have it turn out to be a perfect piece. This is a wonderful thing. Nice piece of jadeite too, with nice striations of green to white, and it ended up selling for $9,000 plus the premium, so around $11,000. I think that was an exceptional buy. It was 33 centimeters tall, so about 13 inches in height. I think this was a very, very good buy. It was a very, very good buy. And then the amber plaques, for some reason they didn't include the dimensions in them, but I'm assuming they were probably about 3 or 4 inches in diameter. Beautifully carved though. Beautifully carved and then polished. So the low areas are sort of left as a matte finish, and then when they finish the relief areas, then they rub it down with wet cloth with a little abrasives in it, or dust even, just very fine, almost like chalk, and that polishes it out. And there's the back of it, just where it's just been cut. But these are big pieces of amber. Amber is highly desirable stuff. And for some reason, they had a very low estimate on them, 300 to 500, and it ended up selling for $8,000 plus the premium, so it ended up at around about $10,500, but very attractive. And then this is the rock crystal piece I was talking about. And if you're familiar with rock crystal, you know how fragile it is. And if anything hits it just slightly wrong or bumps it just slightly wrong, it cracks. It's more brittle than glass as far as I can tell, because I've broken a few pieces of it over the years. But this is an unbelievably well-carved piece of rock crystal. Probably late Qing, early Republic, somewhere in there. Could be 19th century too, but you can see the vase in the center, and then all this open work here. This is all relief work. All of this, that mass of carving. I've never seen anything quite like this. This is absolutely a stupendous piece of rock crystal, unbelievably well carved, and sold for $9,100 plus premium, so about $11,000, and it was 38 centimeters in height. So it was about 15 inches tall. So it was a big piece of rock crystal. I think that was a very good buy. And then over to this, the bronze. We had a lot of questions about this bronze, and I thought it would bring 8 to 10,000, or I thought it would go over the estimate. And I told everybody that, but I said don't be surprised if it jumps and it goes to 15 to 20, because this is a very rare form of gilt splash bronze, and it's inscribed. It's got the Joinville mark on it and all that good stuff. It went way over the estimate, doubled the high estimate, and then some. It was estimated at 5 to 7,000, and I thought, closer to around 12. I ended up going for 16,000 plus premium. It did very well, so around $20,000 all in, but a very rare form. And sometimes all it takes is a rare form. This is a dish form. You don't see them very often. All right, and then over to these, the vases. These were enormous. These were almost 3 feet tall, 35 inches tall. But notice the coloring on them. The coloring on these vases was absolutely beautiful. And one of the things that they did, if I can get the screen to enlarge, hold on. There we go. You'll notice that they did these very enlarged cracked ice pattern here. You often see it with white lines against a blue background on cobalt decorated pieces. That's how you more typically see cracked ice patterns. And here they did it on a sort of a grayish celadon background with blue. And then it appears that there may be a little bit, or it's just the effect of it. It looks like they have a slight outline in maybe white or cream color. And then these beautifully done handles with red outlines and light blue. And then the acanthus leaves are very elongated going up, the bok choy leaves going very elongated going up the neck. And these wonderfully painted pink flowers. This was an absolutely beautiful pair of vases and very unusual. If you're looking at them saying, yeah, I haven't seen that pattern like this before. No. And this is the fun part. A couple of weeks ago I mentioned it's always interesting to see what the taste is in I mentioned France in particular, but the same goes for Italy. Things that are appreciated and enjoyed in Italy and France are often very different than what's appreciated and enjoyed in England or the United States or the Netherlands. It's a taste market, and this is because it all goes through a filter and it goes to where it's going to be most appreciated. And this is something that was apparently most appreciated in Italy, I guess. And then there you can see the side of it here with the cracked ice pattern and then all the flowers floating on it. And you see this on Kangxi jars with cracked ice patterns, but it's all cobalt. And then you have the blue peonies or the blue plum blossoms floating around on top of the cracked ice, growing up through the ice in the spring. And but anyway, that's my thoughts on these. They did great. They brought 30,000 plus premium, so about $40,000 for the pair. And these were first half of the 19th century, probably late Jiajing to early Daguan period. So they ended up selling for about $20,000 per vase. So they must have been even prettier in person, I guess. Really, really nice. And then over to this, the big Kangxi covered jar. We had a lot of inquiries about this, and I thought it would do well. I didn't think it would do as well as it did. It ended up selling for 22,000 plus premium, so around 28,000 by the time it was all done. It measured 80 centimeters in height, though. So it was 2.5 feet, more than 2.5 feet tall. It was a big jar, and apparently it was in good shape. I told everybody that asked about it, make sure you get a condition report, because I thought the estimate was low. The estimate to me, 2,000 to 3,000 seemed very, very low. And I had said to a number of people, it must have restoration or something to have an estimate that low. And it apparently didn't. And ended up going for 22,508. That's why you always get a condition report. Any rate, this was a beautiful jar with its original lid with a foo dog on top of it. And then over to these you may recall last week I was talking about them because the estimate on these struck me as being very, very reasonable. And I think part of this low estimate is just Carlos's way of saying there's no reserve on them. But they had dated these as 18th or 19th century. I couldn't see any way these could be 19th century. These are probably Kangxi period or early Qianlong, but no later. But these beautiful wine coolers, matched pair, and they look like they're in very good shape. And there's the bottom of them. That looks like a Kangxi bottom to me. It looks just like the old Kangxi brush pots. And they measured, each one of them measured 28 centimeters or about 10 inches, 11 inches in height. So they were good size. And they ended up selling for $4,200 plus premium or around $5,400 US. But very, very pretty and very rare to get these in a pair. And the landscape on them in the underglazed blue with the red just really, I thought worked really, really well. All right, and then over here to this, the big jar, the soldier vase that we had mentioned a couple of times. I thought it was one of my favorite things in the sale, just because the workmanship was so good on it. The gilding was all in good shape. The enameling was top drawer. And as we did say, though, when we were looking at this, we said these have sold for $20,000 and $30,000. And certainly over 15, because the estimate was just 8 to 12, and it ended up doing very well. It sold for $27,800 plus the premium, so you're up around $34 so thousand dollars. But beautifully, beautifully done vase, and they don't turn up. And this was very big. It was 130 centimeters tall, so it was over 4 feet tall. This is a big piece of porcelain, and of course shipping it's going to be pretty expensive, but if you're shelling out $34,000 or $5,000, don't be surprised if you get a $1,500 or more shipping bill. All right, and then over to this. The last thing is the Korean tiger. I just love this. I thought this was a great looking scroll. I love the facial expression on the beast. And Korean art, of course, is sort of like Japanese right now. It's soft, so you get some pretty good buys. And somebody picked this up for 2,000 euros plus premium. Absolutely, I loved this picture. I just absolutely loved it. You may remember I went on about it. Oh, it went for 2,500 euros plus premium, excuse me. Only had a couple of bids. Again, the Korean market is a little sleepy right now. It's a great time to collect it like the Japanese market. But I have to admit, we're also seeing a bit of softening in the Chinese stuff too, especially among more commonly seen export wares it's been going on for some time, but the prices seem to be softening even more for 18th century export platters, meat platters, the blue and white platters that we've all seen. Those in the past have, not that many, 20 years ago, they routinely sold for between $400 and $700 depending on the pattern. Good Fitzhugh examples could sell for $1,000 and so forth. And all those prices today are about half of that. Or so. You can buy a perfectly good platter these days that's 16 or 17 inches in diameter in either Fitzhugh or a very fine Nanking ware for under $400. If it's armorial and from a famous collection, that's a different story. But in general, that's the prices. So it's a good time to, if you're collecting, you're going to get more bang for your buck for your collection. All right, and if you're a dealer, don't hang on to it for too long because the prices may go under what you paid for it, because prices tend to move quickly. All right, but anyway, I love this, and I'm so pleased. I hope one of you got that. I really do. I wish you did. If you did, and if you got it, let me know. All right, and then over to this. I wanted to talk about this a little bit. This was the let's see, the ASCA auction over in the United Kingdom in Hammersmith, and I had a number of people ask about this box. An Anglo-Indian, this is sandalwood. And I don't know how much you know about sandalwood, but sandalwood was one of the most prized woods of all in India and in China. It was imported. It was considered to be extremely exotic because of the smell, and it was highly prized. It was right up there with agar wood and zeton. Very fine sandalwood was highly collected, and most of it was picked off of little islands around the Pacific. And the people of the foreign traders that would bring sandalwood into China, in particular, they would bring it as a trade good because they knew the Chinese and the Indian market would always accept it because they revered it. It's got a very nice smell to it and so forth. But at any rate, this sandalwood box came up, and it ended up selling for $1,200, which I sort of said to people, it's a $1,000, $1,500 box, nicely done, beautifully carved, mid to late 19th century. There's the top of it and all that. But here's the deal, is that if you didn't get that, this one didn't sell. And as I told a couple of you, this one is a better box. And why it didn't sell, I don't know. It's almost like a trunk. It's pretty good, not a trunk, but it's pretty good size. It is, let's see here, it's 29 centimeters, a foot long box. But it is spectacularly well carved and has a beautiful patina. And notice the details up here. This has better details than the other box. And this is all hand carved sandalwood. Of course, this was done in Eastern India for the Buddhist market, or the religious market certainly. And there's the top of it. There's the box. Okay, this didn't sell. And if you're one of those people that aren't afraid to approach auction houses to see if they'll sell stuff that got passed, you might contact them for this. It had only a £600 starting price, which means there is a chance they might, if you make them an offer of $300 or $400, they may take it. And I would do that if one of you guys that wanted to know about this box, or if any of you is interested in sandalwood, this is a gem of a box, absolute gem. An absolute gem of a box. Like I said, I think it's better than the other one. So get a hold of ASCA Auctions. What's her name? Beatrice Compy, right there. There she is at the bottom, Islamic and Indian art. And ask her, is it available for sale? You might get a great buy for your collection. All right, and then the last thing I wanted to mention was this. I had this on the newsletter, on the global pages, just because I thought it was so pretty. And this is a Middle Eastern. They're calling it Qajar. I think it's a little, if it is, it's very early Qajar period, 18th century. This beautiful piece of Persian pottery, obviously done like Chinese. And one of the things I always thought would be fun, I saw a collection years ago of Dutch Delft. I've mentioned it before. Dutch Delft in one cabinet, and then the matching cabinet had all the mirror pieces in Kangxi wares. And there were probably, I don't know, 60 or 70 pieces in each of these cabinets. So you could look at them and see the vase here and see the vase there in Delft that matched it. And somebody could do the same thing with Middle Eastern blue and white wares, ceramics. Because they were so heavily influenced by the Chinese exports, and of course it was the first cobalt that went to China came from the Middle East, so it sort of went full circle and then came back, and then the the Middle Eastern decorators, the Persian decorators, the Turkish decorators began emulating Chinese decor with the cobalt that they themselves originally provided. So it's sort of an interesting long history, going back going back to the 9th century when the Mongol traders first started. Well, even before that, the Middle Eastern traders started going into China. All right, and so there we go. Now, over to this. This is something that's coming up. I'm mentioning this because it's unusual. This is at Twensveelingwies, coming up on the July 6th. It's just a really unusual Chinese export 18th century cruet. It looks like it's pretty dirty and would clean up, but it did not have a finial on the top for as far as I can tell. It looked like it should have had one, but I didn't think it did. It's a chocolate pot, I guess, but it's an unusual form. And it's 18th century, probably early 18th century from what I'm seeing of the color of the blue, but I like it a lot. And it's only estimated at it's estimated at 5 to 1,500 euros, which is sort of a wide range. And right now it's got one bidder watching this item, and it may go for the starting price. It may go for the starting price, but this is an interesting pot. Measures about 9 inches tall. So if you like unusual China trade forms, that's one of them. And then over to this. I want to talk about these a little. I had meant to do it last week. These are coming up on the 26th at Bonham's over in the UK. These are fantastic. And these have a very good, long history. If you like things with provenance, you want to look at these Kangxi vases. Now, we've seen these before. These have ormolu mounts on them. We've seen this style of vase before, and they always do well. They're highly desirable. You see them sometimes as double gourds, and sometimes you'll see this pattern of a jar where there's no upper section. It's just the jar form at the bottom. And often you find them, they were very popular in Europe, and a lot of them got mounted with gilt bronze, ormolu, or ormolu bronze, silvered bronze, and so forth. And these are, there they are with their bases. There they are on tables. These are beautiful, and the condition of them looks quite exceptional. I don't notice much wear on the red areas. The green areas look very, very good. And quality and lack of wear is a very big aspect on these, because in the past we've seen some turn up that have been sort of bounced around a little bit. But these are very gutsy, visually very pleasing to look at, and they're fairly large. These things measure 50... How big are they now? 30 inches tall. Yeah, they're 30 inches tall. So they're around, what does that work out to? About 70 or 80 centimeters, I guess. But 83 centimeters, excuse me. Very, very pretty. They're estimated at 25 to 40,000. Starting price is 20,000, but they're absolutely worth it. I just think these things are so great. The colors and the patterns on them and the condition just seem to be really, really good. And if you go down, scroll down to the bottom here, they've got an extensive write-up on the history of these, where they belonged. They were published back in 1912. They've been exhibited in Pennsylvania at the Museum of Art prior to 1942, and so forth. So they're worth. If you like rarities, it's sort of on the expensive side. You might look at those. And the other thing I want to mention was this Chinese ship model. This is coming up at Tremont auctions here in Massachusetts, and it's a Chinese junk warship. And we talked so much about the China trade and the smugglers and the coastal stuff that went on in China, especially during the 18th and early into the 19th century, the Opium War and this and that. And here you have one of these cannon-mounted junks. And this has been sort of typical of what you would see in many cases. This not exactly a warship. And you can see why the British made pretty short work of some of these boats when they came in and opened fire on them, because all they had a bow cannon, probably an aft cannon, an aft cannon, and then a port and starboard cannon. That was it, and some shields and a wooden boat. So good luck. And but there's a nice model. It's 30 inches long. It's estimated at $600 to $800. The mast, I assume, pop off, and you can lay it flat for shipping. Any rate, the sale is no. Wait a minute. This isn't Tremont. This is Thomaston Place. Excuse me. Back up. I have something on here. I think else from Tremont. Thomaston Place in Maine is having this on the 29th. Thomaston Place. It's run by a guy named Kaja Bayou, and nice guy. If you need to call, you may get Kaja on the phone. He's very engaging. He's a very funny guy. So at any rate, nice looking ship. And then this is at Tremont, a pair of Chinese silk brocade panels. They've got a sale coming up in the soft apricot ground. There's a little bit of toning to them from the light, but not bad. And I did notice there's a couple of splits here and there, and on one of them and on the other one. But they seem fine otherwise, and the weaving on them is good. And these are 18th century. These, I don't know how they dated them. Oh, they dated them as 18th century. They're estimated $1,000 to $1,500. They're 6 feet long, basically 71 inches, and they look otherwise they look fine. They'll certainly hang well, and the estimate is reasonable, $1,000 to $1,500. I think they should be worth that each of them. So we'll see. We'll see what the silk market wants to pay for them. All right, and then hopping along over to here. Here's some results from eBay last week. This was you may remember I talked about these. They were the vase, the jar was damaged, and the candlesticks were damaged. But those are 18th century Chinese famille rose candlesticks, Chinese export candlesticks. And they don't turn up very often. And even with all of them having some degree of a little bit of damage, the lot still brought $455. But the candlesticks I thought were terrific, and I thought that the enameling on them looked very appealing, and absolutely 18th century. So there you go. And then hopping along over to this, the little brush rest that was on ended up selling for $1,713. This is a 19th century example. Nicely done. They turn up. Scholars' objects, collectors love them. It had a 4-character seal script of the Qianlong period on the bottom. It's not obviously Qianlong, but still a nice one. And because it's a scholars thing and it's well done in a nice form, $1,713. And then hopping along over to this. This was Gestard JG Arts Limited. I always get that messed up, and I will for the rest of my life. Had some nice carvings up. One of them was this very charming thing of a Luohan bearing a peach with his walking staff. And this was a good buy, $247. Can't go wrong for that. It was about 9 inches tall, as I recall. I don't know where the information went on it, but anyway, I'm pretty sure it was 9 inches so tall, 8 or 9 inches tall. $247. That was a steal. And then hopping along over to this, the small moon flask. This was a smaller one than normal. It was 26 centimeters, or about 9 inches in height, 10 inches in height, and but nicely done. Famille June, turquoise background with 2 dragons on it. Looked good. Late Qing. Nothing wrong with it. Ended up, I think somebody got a good buy, $443. In the past, we've seen them sell for more. They can sell for $600 or $700 and so forth. But this was a nice one, and this came from NM9696, who puts things on eBay fairly often. And these were all on all of this was on the newsletter page, as you know. And then the fan. This may have been the best buy of a rare fan in months, maybe this year. This was a very rare fan, and I don't know why it only went for $1,000. This is, if you look up China trade fans, you're not going to find them with this decoration on the blades, on the lacquer blades, very often. It's extremely rare. And this fan would look like it was probably made around 1840 to 1860. Very nice colors still, and a very rare form. But at any rate, somebody picked it up for $1,025. We've seen other examples that aren't as elaborate as this, sell for $1,600 and $1,700. And I thought for sure this thing would bring it around $2,000 anyway. I think this was like one of the buys of the week. So I hope one of you got it. You never know. This is why you never. That's why I always say leave a bid. You never know. And then over here to this was Migolari had a sale. He always has a lot of stuff up. This was a very nice Kangxi bowl with a mark on the bottom. And in the end, it did quite well. It brought $3,615. Decoration was good on it, inside and out. I think it had a hairline on it. Did it have a hairline or no? Maybe it didn't. No, this one didn't. Okay. Somebody had a bowl that had a hairline in it. I thought it was this one. It isn't this one. Anyway, it did very well. It brought $3,615. Good-looking piece of porcelain, and so forth. And those of you that, by the way, those of you that aren't familiar, if you come over to the site, over to our website, and you go here, this is the newsletter page. People say, "What's the newsletter page?" I'm going to explain it. This is over here. It's where it says newsletter page. And every week we go through eBay on Thursday and Friday. We start on Thursdays and go through and pluck out things that are on here that are in auction that look good to us. And these are some of the items that we found for last week. And we make sure they're okay before we put them on here. And we try to be very, very careful about that. And you can see all the things we just talked about. There's the brush rest. There are two figures. There was this one and that one from the same seller and so forth. So we put this on here. And if you want to be notified when this is updated each week, just click on the sign up today and just give us your email address and you'll get an email the minute the page is updated each week. All right, now hopping along back over to here to this, the little brush pot. Nice looking 18th century brush pot with the fisherman on the shoreline, sort of an understated bit of decoration. Here's the bottom of it. Looks to be early to mid 18th century. Without handling it, it's a little tricky to say. Could be Kangxi period too. But I like the fisherman. I like the scene. And so no, that's no right there. Okay, 18, just regular Qinlong period. Nice brush pot though. $1,084, but very well done. Very well done. And this was also from Milan. There it is. I like that scene a lot. You see it in Chinese art all the time. You see it in Japanese art in blue and white too. It's just one of those popular things. And then hopping along, things that are coming up this week. There's a few things. One of them is this. I want to talk about this. Daniel Rapp. And if you don't know who Daniel Rapp was, he was a porcelain dealer in Holland in the 18th century. But he was involved with the Orangist revolution, the rebellion in the 1740s. But he was a very famous guy. And this decoration, this is an 18th century plate. And this particular portrait was taken from one of the most famous portraits of him that was ever done. And it shows him with his book and so forth. It looks like he's got a little, like a Chinese scroll or panel or something beside him, and he's pointing at something. Oh, it looks like he's got a coin under his finger. But he was a Chinese porcelain dealer. So if you want to have a porcelain dish with a picture of a porcelain dealer on it, this is it. This is a very nice thing. It's only up to $58. It ends Sunday. This is a rare bird. It is not new. This is old. This is a legitimate old thing. And my opinion is it should bring $700 to $1,000. That's what I think it should bring. It's a rare, rare, rare thing. If you go around looking for other ones, you're going to look for a long time. I don't know if you'll even find one. All right, and then over to this. This is nice. They think this may be a Peranican or Straits example pewter tea caddy. It's beautifully decorated. This is Stubbsy Wubsy has this, but it's a very finely made tea caddy. I like works in metal. No, it's not the most expensive thing on here for the week. It's not all about the money. It's about how great things are. This is a great box. Beautifully worked pewter, and of course they used pewter because it was for people that couldn't afford silver. There's the hallmark on the bottom. It's 19th century pewter work, and they exported these to Europe, of course, and they used them in China. And here's the end of it with peony lotus blossoms and peony blossoms. This is a really nice box. There are the compartments and so forth. I absolutely love this. And in the old days they had pewter and they used to polish it like silver because it was meant to give the impression that it was silver. And that's why churches had pewter chalices because they couldn't afford silver chalices. Poor churches couldn't afford silver, so they had pewter. And if they were a really poor church, there was a church in America back in the 17th century in Danvers, Massachusetts, that had wooden offering bowls, wooden chalices and bowls that were painted with a sort of a silver-looking paint because they couldn't afford even pewter. That's how poor they were. But in the old days, pewter was polished in America and elsewhere to look like silver. And in early American houses, for that matter, they would have a big rack in the dining room, a cupboard with pewter plates on them, and they would keep those pewter plates polished like silver at all times so that when they lit a candle, it would reflect, we get the maximum reflection out of the light, because a lot of early American houses were very dark walls, especially the kitchens, and light would just get sucked into them like a vacuum, and light didn't do much good in the room that it was in. So they would polish the pewter to make sure that it reflected as much light as possible, because the scenes of 18th century American houses and European houses where they walk in and they do it in the movies and you'll see 30 or 40 candles burning in a room. They never did that. that would be considered outrageous. They might during Christmas light a few extra candles, but candles were very expensive. They were all handmade, hand dipped. Took a lot of effort to make them, and you lit one candle at a time, and you saved all the wax to recycle it, and it was a big thing. But at any rate, the pewter was always polished to give as much light to the room as it could if it was on chargers. Today they don't bother, of course, and they want them to look old. But that's a nice box. And what's the? I'm going to finish this. Hold on. What's the estimate? Well, there's no estimate, of course. It's only up to 22. This is I think a $200 or $300 piece of pewter. Anyway, it's a beautiful piece of pewter. If you've been looking to buy a piece, this is it. And then you have this 18th century. They're calling it 19th century. It doesn't look it to me. It looks 18th century with this puce border. At any rate, it's getting ready to close in a couple of days. He's calling it 18th century, 19th century. I don't agree. Where's the back of it? That looks like an 18th century foot rim to me, and that looks like an 18th century. That looks like 18th century decoration, the way the faces are done. Anyway, it's up to $227. I think this will probably jump at the end up to around probably around $450 to $550. And then over to this big jar. I don't know why this thing hasn't got anything. There's nothing wrong with this. It's got 4 days to go. It closes on Tuesday. The seller didn't put the dimensions in for some odd reason. They put a water bottle in here, I guess, to show you how big it is. For heaven's sakes, there are two things that should always be in a listing. Well, three things: date, condition, any repairs, cracks, or hairlines, and dimensions. How big is it? You go through all this work to take these nice photographs. Don't be lazy and leave out dimensions. And I don't see any dimensions on this one. I don't know why they do that. It only takes a second to snap the measurements and off a ruler and drop them in there. But anyway, this is a nice jar. It's a late Qing jar done in the Kangxi style with this sort of nice vine and swag decoration with these lotus blossoms. This is this is not a modern copy. I'll show you the bottom of it. There it is. That's typical of a Kangxi mark you see on revival pieces, and it's got this big white foot. The foot looks fine as that. It's been cleaned. That's why it's so white. They've obviously cleaned it, which is fine. And there's the shoulder of it. It's only up to $9. It's got one bid. I don't quite understand that. It should be, and the shipping isn't terribly unreasonable. It's $60 from Texas to here. This should bring $600 to $800, I would think, pretty comfortably. And then hopping over to this is doing very well. This is a straights bowl, very unusual colors, 19th century, beautifully done. This is a really good Peranakan bowl. Very dense foliage, and has a dense enamels on the foliage, and the bottom of it has a very unusual treatment. They've applied flowers underneath the piece as well as on it, and here's the side of the foot. Looks absolutely fine. Nice, neat decoration, beautifully done. And right now it's already up to $7,991 because this is an older straights bowl, and it's fairly large. I don't know where it's going to end up. I suspect that it'll probably be around $13,000, but we'll see. It closes on Sunday, and it's up to $7,991. But if you've been looking for a really nice straights period or straights culture bowl, this is it. That's about as good as. Notice how well the yellow contrasts to the ground color below, and the strong, that sort of almost emerald green that they used. The color selection was very good. And then lastly is this. This is also from Stubbsy Wubsy. It's a nice Sichuan pottery Buddha with copper glazed decoration that gave it the red tone, and then this sort of celadon-y brown, sort of brown cafe color, and then raw biscuit, his belly, and a very happy looking face. He's got one eye wandering off to the right a little bit. But notice the teeth are done well, the eyes are done well. It's a very, very attractive piece of pottery. And it's, let's see, how big is this one? It's 16 inches, 12 centimeters tall, excuse me. So it's about 5 inches tall, roughly. All right, so it's a nice piece of pottery. It's up to $142, closes in a couple days. Should get up to about $250 or $300. All right, so that's pretty much it for the week. A lot going on. There's a bunch of sales closing in the next few days. We're gonna have a lot to talk about next week. And what else? I think that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you haven't joined us on Patreon, please do. We put a couple of extra videos over there this week. I do a video over there every week. And some of you that have subscribed, I hope you enjoy them. We do every week. I grab something that I've had for a long time or something that's interests me, and I do like a 5 or 10 minute video on that one thing. And it's for the subscribers, just sort of a little chat. But we also put some other things up there this week, obviously, and so forth. So anyway, check it out. Check it out. Have a good weekend. We'll be back next week. And thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment. Tell me what you'd like to see. We are working on the foot rim images for a new foot rim video for Ching and then Ming. As I promised, we're working on that, picking away at getting good pictures, and we're going to do it slower this time. I guess last time that everybody said I was too quick, but I was just learning to use YouTube back then when I first did the first video, so it might have been a little rough, a little not quite the way it should be. So I apologize for that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and see you all next week. Bye bye.